So I'm installing Cali Bamboo flooring, and this flooring isn't engineered. It's actually created. It's a bamboo strand, and then they put some sort of an epoxy or something in it, form it together in one solid piece. But anyways, it's really hard. A lot harder than hardwood floors. We had another room, and it still looks brand new after a few years. So we're going to put this down in the living room and our dining room. And I already started a segment over here. You see, I pulled the molding up so I can put it in underneath the molding. It looks a lot better, I think. So you could put a half molding on there if you wanted to, but or quarter molding. But this is a little easier, I think. Looks better when you're done. And you gotta leave some room around the edge for it to expand or contract. I'm gluing it down. This is click together, but I'm gluing it to the floor, so it's going to be very stable. In my other room, I put it as a floating floor, and it kind of creaked around a little bit. Here you can see as I walk on it, it doesn't make any noise at all. So it's harder, and it's more expensive to glue it down, but I think it's better. This room over here, this is my first row. This is the hardest to start, and what I did to stabilize this is I put screws towards the edge to stabilize the board so it doesn't move around, because when you click it together, you got to push in pretty hard with it to get it to go in place. And if it's just sitting on the glue, it moves all over the place, and it's almost impossible to get it to come together. Anyways, I'll kind of make some recordings as we go through this, but I use a 1/4-inch trowel when we're putting down the glue, and you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself or the glue will dry and you're kind of hosed. A couple things there in the time-lapsed video you couldn't really see very well. But to get these to engage, you have to push them together pretty good. So I use a screwdriver and put it into the groove there, just tap it with a hammer to get it to push into for this piece to fit into this one. You know, I tilt it up a little bit and then push it in like that. And it snaps in and then snaps down. But it has to go in first before it goes down. And like I said, those first 2 rows out there, those are really hard to keep stable. It would adjust the glue, so, and plus it was kind of messy. But when I put those screws behind the boards after I got it straight, then it was much easier because that stabilized the boards. The other thing is, I didn't talk about preparation on the subfloor. You want to make sure that you get all the tacks and staples and nails and all the debris up as well, so the glue sticks. But you don't want anything sticking up to push the floor up higher. So go over it real good with a vacuum and just smack all the staples into the wood with a hammer or something so it's all flat. So I have 2 rooms. I could have ran the boards the other way, I guess. Probably would have been easier. I decided to go the full length. A possible problem is going to be when the room on the left is the living room, to the room on the right is the dining room. When I cross over there, I got to make sure that those line up perfectly. This on the left I put in yesterday. This on the right I just put in as we're watching there. But the stuff on the right you can still scooch around because the glue isn't dry yet. So I'm going to hurry up and put this last 3 rows in so it matches up to this room, and that way if I need to move stuff around a little bit on the right, I can. I wasn't expecting that, but yeah, it'll scooch a little bit. Once it dries though, it's not going anywhere. I mentioned earlier that this takes You have to push it in to place and before it locks in and it'll set down. Show you what I was talking about. And also, you want to make sure that these rows are perfectly straight. Because if it's off a little bit, it's going to be really hard to get it to lock in place. Because if it's bent, then it won't lock in that end. This one's a little bit off. You see, you set it down and it kind of stays there. So I got to push it in to your, I guess that's to your left. Push it that way, and then once it gets in the seat, then it will fully sit down. So I was using a screwdriver. They probably make something for this. It'd be nice if I had a wider end on the screwdriver. But make sure it's not too thick, because you get something too thick, then it'll start splitting apart the seam and messing the board up. Sometimes it doesn't take too much, as long as it's lined up correctly. Once it gets in seat, then it kind of just sets down. And with the glue, it can be quite messy too if you. So you see it kind of set in the net side first and then it worked its way down. It's got a little bit of bow to it, not much, but it's still able to compensate. It compensates a little bit, but you want to make sure you get these rows as straight as you possibly can. And that talks about staggering these joints. These two, I should have moved this down a little bit more, because if you put your joints right across from each other, it'll get crooked. So even these on the, like a board apart, this one should have been over like a foot or two. So I screwed that one up, but oh well, too late now. You know, but I try to avoid that. So when you put in your starter piece, make sure that the joints are a couple feet apart, even on the next board over. You know, third board probably doesn't matter a whole lot, but if you line up your joints, make it look pretty, then it's going to be harder to keep the board straight and it's going to be screwed up. So these, you just drop them in the joint, move it all the way over to the left. You got to work from left to right on this, because that's the way the joints go together. This one on the right actually goes over the one on the left. When you're laying out the room, make sure that you consider, hey, I'm going to move from left to right. Nothing like a good hammer. So this one's a little bit up off the floor. And see, it sticks down. You gotta walk on it a little bit too to make sure it adheres to the glue and fills in the joints. Now, as far as putting glue down, move you up here a little bit. I only work like 2 or 3 boards out at a time, because basically it's cleaner that way. You don't have to reach over the glue quite as far. So I just use this Bostik stuff. It's pretty good. It costs about $100 a can. So actually gluing it down is a lot more expensive than doing a floating floor. I'll show you our floating floor in the other room. It just creaks a little bit, but it still looks nice. And, so the glue's a little bit more expensive, but I think it actually works a little bit better. It's definitely messier and hard to work with. So got a 1/4 inch trowel here. You don't want too much glue left behind either. When the stuff isn't cheap, but there's no sense. And I kind of work it towards the inside, so I'm not leaving big globs on the outside or on the inside towards the other board. Kind of like shoveling snow. think you get the idea. Overview of this room. This had some challenges. That big hutch was pretty heavy. I put on sliders. And this, like I said, this stuff's so hard. The plastic sliders allowed it to just slide right across the top without screwing up the floor. But that piece there is pretty heavy. So I had it off to the right earlier, and I put in the floor. Then my son and I moved it over to the left, and also put in the molding and everything. So I have to move things around. After I get these 4 rows in, the next we'll be putting all the stuff from that used to be in the hutch back in the hutch. My wife will take care of that. And then we got this other wall unit from Germany over here. Kind of a cool piece, but that's going into the living room over here. So I'm going to finish off the living room first. Move the stuff off the table, move the table to the left, and then take that shrunk piece and move that into the living room. So I'm kind of doing this in phases, trying to save work. I don't have room to move everything out of here. Just kind of moving it all around as I go. Cutting the pieces, you can use I use a miter saw to make the straight cuts just because it's easier. And you can also use a circle saw if you wanted to, or sawzall to cut in the side joints there. And see that piece there, I cut in for the next piece to go around the register. That I did with a sawzall basically. This stuff cuts harder than regular wood, so you might have to replace your saw blades when you're done, but it will cut. And I guess you're supposed to avoid breathing this stuff in as you go. I don't know, that's about it. Like I said, this stuff's pretty durable, and once we get this in, I'm not worried about having to bring this floor up because this is going to be here looking like new for years. Also, I've been working with gloves because on the bottom side of the boards, it does produce a lot of splinters. The top side's really smooth. They got that polished off pretty good, so you don't have to worry about walking barefoot on or anything. But on the bottom side of it, will give you some splinters pretty good. So you want to protect yourself from that. I guess that's about it. To make the end measurements, basically I turned the board backwards. So this end here is what's going to get cut off. And I push it up against the drywall and pull it back a little bit. And I forget what the recommendation is for the amount of movement, but this is going to sit under the drywall, so there's plenty of room for this to move around. But I just want the trim to cover it up, so I push it against the drywall and pull it back maybe, I don't know, no more than a 1/4 inch. Then I'll come here and make my mark as to where this piece needs to sit. Now this piece here is going to go against the drywall end down there. I'm just going to flip it around. But it reduces a little bit of work. There's a very more accurate way to measure things. A tape measure, you could use that too, I guess. It just takes out a step. And you see I got the same thing down there with the 2 more boards required measurements. I'm going to cut 3 boards outside. So this is where I'm cutting it. Like I said, I use my miter saw to make the cuts. And I also got my sawzall here for doing like cuts around registers. Got circle saws there as well. When I do some plunge cuts with that, I use basically. But anyways, this is kind of nice to make straight cuts. Just make sure everything's lined up. And I get my particle mask here. Like I said, this stuff probably isn't the greatest to breathe in. And line everything up. So this makes a nice even cut. And you can see this stuff is all solid bamboo and whatever they use to hold it together. It's not engineered, it's just pressed together. The top side is very smooth. You won't have any problems with splinters there, but like I said, the bottom side, you want to handle it with gloves because you'll get splinters in your fingers. You don't need me to tell you that. You can figure it out soon enough, I guess. I also chose to pull up the molding instead of just putting a 1/4 round molding to cover it up. It kind of looks better this way, I think. So I pulled it up and I'm going to paint. I already did paint the molding. My son came out and painted it for me yesterday. So I put it down. It's going to look nice, and I'll recaulk it and it'll look like a new installation. There's all the old carpet going to the dump. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I was able to cut a piece out underneath that was underneath the table and underneath the sofa. That was pretty much brand new carpeting. And I put that in my upstairs hallway. Basically, it was free carpeting, so that looks really nice now. But all this stuff is kind of worn. So let's go into the dump. And here's our den that I did a few years ago with this Cali Bamboo flooring. Basically the same stuff that I put in the other room. A couple things I wanted to show you. This was put in as a floating floor. And basically it looks the same. No difference there. I still pulled up the molding and put that back down again. So it looks the same. But the difference is when you walk on it, see that creaking? Not terrible, and actually it kind of quieted down over here where it gets lots of traffic. But the point is that the floating floor makes a little bit of noise. With a glued down floor, though it's more difficult, more expensive, actually doesn't move. There's no creaking. So that's pretty cool. Another thing I want to show you is this trim piece here that I made. I actually cut this, made a 1-inch strip, and then cut it on an angle so it transitions down. Found the trim piece that they sold wasn't sufficient, so I made this. Actually works pretty good. It was just made from the scraps. Had to screw it down though and pre-drill it because the bamboo, you can't nail through it. It's too hard. It's very difficult too. And here I am. I'm almost done. It's just about a quarter of the job over there in that room. But I wanted to show you this when it's glued down. I'm walking around it, and there's no creaking at all, so it's more stable. Like I said, the downside to it is it's messy. You can see there I got a little residue from the glue. When I was trying to put the boards in, sometimes it'd slip up and make a mess. So I wiped the glue up best I could with a paper towel, and I'm going to try to get the rest of that off with mineral spirits. I think that'll be okay. But the rest of it, after I got going, I was pretty clean with the glue. So you got to be careful, and you're always like getting, you're working with glue. This stuff is messy. So the transition from one room to the other seemed to work out pretty good. I normally just overlap the joints so they're a long ways apart from each other. This one here, I did this on purpose so to make a transition from one room to the next, because I got all this other stuff over here to move. But anyways, so that'll work good just for that one row. But normally when you put the joints in, you can see they should be staggered and definitely not right across from each other. And these two right here are probably a little bit too close, but it worked out all right. And frankly, once you get this stuff glued down, it ain't going nowhere. It's stuck. So, yeah. But it turned out really nice. Cali Bamboo wood flooring. This is the Mocha Distressed. And it has, we liked it because it had like the black seams and it had a lot of distinction in the pattern. It has these little like marks here. You can see like little, I don't know sure what those are. Some of the pieces have them, some of them don't. I don't know. I think it's just part of the design, but it looks nice. But I would say gluing it down is worth the extra effort because it doesn't creak when I walk on it, And we're thinking about pulling the other floor up and gluing it down. Probably won't do that because that's a lot of work. but we could do that with a floating floor just to make it more stable. So we got this room done. Still have the dining room to get done. So I was looking at the what to clean the floor with because I had some residue from the glue. Occasionally, get your fingers on top of the wood or something. Someone said use a Murphy's oil soap, and so I used that, and it really did a nice job. You see there's no residue on the floor at all, especially if you look at the glare coming through the windows on the floor. It really cleaned it up quite nicely. So that did a real good job. So if you decide to glue down your floor, the point is you're going to get some residue on top, and clean the glue off the floor right away. I just had like some film on top of it from just some residue from the glue. Anyways, this Murphy's oil soap did a real good job of cleaning the floor and making it look really nice, actually. The glue said mineral spirits would work, but I didn't want to use that because I wasn't sure if that would hurt the floor or not. Because Murphy's oil soap is pretty good for wood. In this case, bamboo flooring, same thing.